For months after Pearl Harbor, the United States was still absorbing the scale of the blow. The battleships at Pearl Harbor had been torn open. Japan's advance stretched across the Pacific and Southeast Asia. In Washington, President Franklin Roosevelt wanted more than a statement. He wanted proof that Japan itself was not beyond reach. The answer became one of the strangest operations of the war. A Navy officer, Captain Francis Lowe, saw Army bombers near a carrier deck outline and asked a dangerous question. Could a land bomber launch from a carrier? It could not land back aboard. It was not built for that world. But if it could take off, it might cross the ocean, strike Japan, and keep flying west to airfields in China. General Hap Arnold chose Lieutenant Colonel James H. Doolittle to lead the mission, known as Special Aviation Project No. 1. Doolittle was not just a combat officer. He was an engineer, test pilot, and one of America's best-known aviators. The aircraft would be North American B-25B Mitchell medium bombers from the 17th Bombardment Group. The crews were told they were volunteering for a dangerous mission. They were not told the target at first. At Eglin Field, Florida, the problem became physical. A loaded B-25 normally needed far more runway than a carrier could give it. Navy Lieutenant Henry Miller helped train the Army crews to lift the bombers into the air within roughly 300 feet. The crews practiced short takeoffs, low-level flying, night navigation, and bombing without normal landmarks. The aircraft were modified for range. Extra fuel went in. Weight came out. Even the Norden bomb site was replaced by a simpler low-altitude site. At Alameda, California, 16 B-25s were loaded onto the flight deck of USS Hornet. The sight was almost impossible. Army bombers sitting on a Navy carrier, wings crowded across the deck, no room for Hornet to launch her own fighters. Hornet sailed on April 2, 1942, and later joined Vice Admiral William Halsey's force. USS Enterprise provided air cover while Hornet carried the bombers toward Japan. The plan depended on distance. The bombers were supposed to launch close enough to reach their targets and still have fuel to continue to China. But on the morning of April 18th, the task force encountered a Japanese picket boat while still farther out than planned. The boat was attacked and sunk, but the commanders had to assume a warning might already be moving across the radio. The mission's margin had just disappeared. Doolittle and the Navy commanders chose to launch early. Around 8:20 in the morning, Doolittle's B-25 went first, rolling down Hornet's deck into heavy wind and gray water. One by one, the other bombers followed. Each launch asked the same question: would the aircraft climb, or would it vanish off the bow? All 16 got airborne. None could come back. The bombers crossed the coast of Japan at low altitude. They struck targets in Tokyo, Yokohama, Yokosuka, Nagoya, Kobe, and Osaka. The physical damage was limited. The bombs were small compared with what later air campaigns would deliver. But that was not the whole meaning of the raid. Japan's leaders had promised that the home islands were secure. American bombers over Japanese cities broke that promise in public. After the attack, the danger changed shape. The aircraft were low on fuel, flying toward China in worsening weather. 15 crews headed west. One aircraft, piloted by Captain Edward York, diverted to the Soviet Union, where the crew was interned. The others bailed out, ditched, or crash-landed after reaching the China coast and interior regions. Many survived because Chinese civilians, soldiers, and resistance networks hid them, guided them, and moved them away from Japanese forces. The cost did not end when the bombers fell. 8 raiders were captured by Japanese forces. 3 were executed. 1 died in captivity. The remaining prisoners endured years before liberation. In China, Japanese reprisals against communities believed to have helped the Americans were severe. Casualty estimates vary, but the human cost was enormous. Doolittle initially thought the mission might be judged a failure. All 16 aircraft were lost. The damage in Japan was limited. But in the spring of 1942, symbols mattered. Americans needed evidence that the war could be carried back across the Pacific. Japan had to confront the vulnerability of its own skies. Doolittle received the Medal of Honor, and every raider received the Distinguished Flying Cross. Before the final thought, take a quiet second. If stories like this matter to you, please like this video and subscribe for more military history told with respect. The Doolittle Raid did not win the Pacific War. It did not destroy Japan's war industry. Its power was timing, courage, and consequence. It was a joint Army-Navy gamble carried out by 80 airmen, supported by sailors, planners, and Chinese civilians who paid dearly for helping them. On April 18, 1942, a handful of medium bombers lifted from a deck that was never meant to launch them, and the Pacific War entered a new phase.